following is an extended product spotlight paid for by BASF Canada and InVigor Hybrid Canola. Hey everyone, I'm Sean Haney, host of Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, and the founder of Real Agriculture. Thanks for listening and welcome to the next episode of the Canola PODcast, sponsored by InVigor Hybrid Canola from BASF. The Canola PODcast is a series where we discuss useful tips and tools growers can take to the field to help grow successful crops. Don't forget to also visit canolaschool.com to see agronomic videos from Real Agriculture and BASF throughout the growing season. Okay, today we're talking about protecting your InVigor hybrid canola investment with fungicides. And our guest is Lori Yarnell. She's a technical market specialist for fungicides at BASF. Thanks for joining us today, Lori. Looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into this topic. So, in prior podcasts, we've looked at the top impacts to yield potential when growing InVigor hybrid canola and the role that diseases can play, trying to steal some of that yield away from us. This year, there's a lot of chatter about verticillium from this past growing season, but it's important to go back to the basics and talk also about sclerotinia. Lori, most growers already have experience with sclerotinia. Can you give a brief overview for us about what we're talking about with this disease?
For sure, Sean. So sclerotinia, as you mentioned, economically very important historically here in Western Canada, as much as there's a lot of new diseases popping up. Over the past decade, sclerotinia continues to be one of the major yield robbers for our canola crops. So sclerotinia is one of our most economically important canola diseases here in Canada. While it's a fungal pathogen that infects canola primarily at that flowering timing. So that's when often we're timing our fungicides to protect from sclerotinia. It's found all over Western Canada and isn't just a pathogen of canola. It can infect most of our broadleaf crops. So thinking potatoes, sunflowers, our pulse crops, peas and lentils and chickpeas. So generally the inoculum is going to be around, and often it comes down to weather in terms of how economically significant sclerotinia is going to be. One of the challenges with protecting from sclerotinia is timing that fungicide application and knowing whether that fungicide application is needed. By the time we see the symptoms of sclerotinia, those white lesions and really the white stems later in the season, it's too late to control it. So we're wanting to spray at that flowering timing before we see any symptoms. So that's definitely one of the challenges, is being proactive in protecting our crop. We know that a lot of investment goes into growing InVigor canola, so wanting to be proactive in protecting against diseases like sclerotinia. So historically, I mentioned it's been one of the most economically important diseases here in Western Canada. We know that for every percent incidence, you're losing about 0.5% of yield. So if you have, for example, 100 canola plants, for every 10 that have a sclerotinia symptom, we're estimating you lose about 5% of your yield. So it gets to be very economically significant, especially with commodity prices the way they are these years. So if you're aiming for 50 bushel canola, 5%, you're using 2.5 bushels. So it can be quite significant for growers.
Yeah, so now considering the potential yield loss, and obviously with yield loss comes dollars that are at risk, why is there hesitation to spraying? Why isn't this more of an automatic decision for growers to be proactive on this disease?
It's a great question, Sean. I think part of it comes back to these past few years. We have been in a drought cycle here in Western Canada that we know with sclerotinia, weather plays a huge impact on what the risk is going to be, that we need wet soils and really that humid microclimate in order to have the apothecia and the sclerotinia spores present at flowering, and need a lot of moisture during that flowering timing in order to have the disease really infect the canola and provide that economic damage. So we do know, though, that as we're getting back to some more normal moisture conditions in 2022, that under historically average conditions, we expect to lose about 8% yield to sclerotinia. That our research over the past about decade and a half has shown that even under under average moisture conditions, we expect an 8% yield loss. And looking at, if you're aiming for 50 bushel canola, we'll use that as the target again, that's 4 bushels an acre, so can be quite significant. I do think another reason growers have historically been hesitant does come down to that whole ROI equation, that the commodity prices often did historically make it more difficult to want to spray. That if you're dealing with if you're not getting as much for your canola, you need more bushels in order to pay for that fungicide application. Whereas when commodity prices are looking like they'll stay on the higher end for the next little bit, it does make it an easier decision. I think the last part that likely comes into play is this is one of the last time growers will be in the sprayers during the year, that often they're tired from herbicides, tired from insecticides, that they just want to get to the lake at that time of year. So wanting to spend a bit more time in the sprayer can be difficult. So I'd recommend really, before the emotion comes into it, really doing that ROI calculation in advance and knowing, what that trip to the lake might cost them. That if you're losing 4 bushels an acre, if weather has been pretty normal, that really adds up if over 1,000 acres of canola, those 4 bushels an acre. So doing some of that work in advance to try and take the emotion out of the fungicide decision at that time of year is probably a good idea.
Yeah, like you said, at today's prices, that 4 bushels, that's a much bigger number than it was, say, 5 years ago. Sprayer fatigue, I've actually never thought about it in that way. When you're talking about the ROI calculation, right away into my head, I thought, okay, so if you do have the conditions in the growing season, and you are, thinking, should I spray, not spray, on the fields that you do go ahead, you leave a check strip, right? So you get a better understanding of what that ROI actually was in the year. And every year is going to be different, but at least then you're collecting some data on your own farm if you're doing something like a check strip on the sprayed versus non-sprayed.
Exactly. Always recommend those check strips to know on my specific conditions with my planting densities, my organic matter, my fertilizer levels, how much ROI is that fungicide bringing? Really important.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts and predictions on what growers should expect to see this next year when it comes to disease?
It's a great question. And we all wish we had that crystal ball that would give that prediction and make that decision to spray easier, right? We know that this past year across Western Canada, moisture levels were up a little bit. They weren't perfect, but some areas did have a more return to average moisture conditions as compared to 2021 and some of the years prior. And with that, with the Canadian disease surveys that happened provincially, we did see a return to more normal sclerotinia levels across the provinces. So we know the inoculums out there, that if we have moist conditions in late June and into July, I would expect normal to really normal sclerotinia levels, which we do know are economically significant and worth that fungicide application. That we put a lot of money into our canola crops, trying to give them the best possible start. So it's worth in protecting that investment, especially with our InVigor canola.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, because if you don't have the moisture, then you don't have any yield. So you get the moisture, which does increase the susceptibility to a disease like sclerotinia. So you need to protect that yield. So you're basically, you got it. It's not where it's like, I wish the conditions didn't exist. But if they didn't exist, there's no yield, and we got 2021 all over again, right? So that's kind of what that looks like. So it's a very interesting sort of balancing act. When it comes to the BASF's portfolio, do you have any solutions when it comes to sclerotinia?
For sure. We know that one of the main reasons farmers choose InVigor is due to the consistent and industry-leading yield potential. So we want to protect that yield potential with the best possible solution. Within the BASF portfolio, Categra fungicide, it's been tested on InVigor over the past 5 or so years, and we know it's the best in the industry at protecting for sclerotinia, especially under those high disease conditions. So when you have the conditions to grow a good InVigor crop, generally the conditions, as you mentioned, are going to be right to have Sclerotinia infection as well. So want the best. Categra, it's really the standard in the industry. It combines two leading Sclerotinia actives, so prothioconazole and boscalid. So having two effective modes of action in there to really just round out that control and give growers the great performance that they would expect on their InVigor canola. It's a very simple formulation. It's a convenient premix, no additives, or not additives, adjuvants required. So simple once again, at that end of the year where maybe there is a bit of sprayer fatigue, want something simple and effective that's going to protect the investment that growers have made onto their InVigor canola up until that point.
Hey, Laura, this has been great. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me, Sean.
That's all the time we have. Appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. Remember, don't forget to visit canolaschool.com to check out all of our videos, really timely information that Real Agriculture and BASF produce to provide you with insight to grow that thicker, more profitable crop across Western Canada. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in.